Thanks for inviting me to the talk and this amazing session with great students and guests. Today we'll be talking about the metaverse, not surprisingly, but particularly I want to talk about and share how we think about kind of like how the future of the internet, like what it means for us to connect with each other and build communities online in the future. So let me start sharing my screen and start our talk. Okay, so we're gonna talk about, actually, is this optimized with videos? Okay. So I want to start our session with watching the video of the famous opera called the Aida. I'm sure a lot of people recognize this music. Yeah, this is a video of the famous opera Aida. So if you think about how people have been sharing our experience and like, so for thousands of years we've been gathering together, like singing together, celebrating ideas with like visual symbols, while sharing the entire experience with each other. So this is how people communicate and form a society and become part of stories like greater than each other, like themselves. And I think that's the basis of how people have been forming societies. Like, by the way, are we seeing my video or just seeing the slide?
We see your video, but
Okay.
there's a little like a Zoom menu bar that's visible as well.
Oh, I see. I think it's because the actually, do you think there's a video optimization which I think is causing this issue?
Yeah.
So if it's gonna be mostly recorded and shared, like, should I maybe like start again with the better recorded?
Okay.
Okay. So let me just start again. How about now? Can you don't see the bar?
We don't see the bar. It's
Okay, great.
black at the moment.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, let me just start from like this slide. So we're gonna talk about how we're gonna connect with each other and build communities online in the future. And what it means to the evolution of internet and metaverse. We want to start with watching this video, which is it's a clip from the Aida, the famous opera. So this is how people have been forming communities and societies for thousands of years. People have been gathering and singing together, celebrating ideas with visual symbols, while sharing the entire space and experience with each other. That's how people form a society, communicate, and become part of stories that are like bigger than themselves. And so this is not just happening in the ancient society. Like this is the kind of video of like the city of Buenos Aires right after the World Cup final, when they were celebrating the the winning of the World Cup after decades. So yeah, so this is how people come together, and this is a natural way for us to build connection with each other, like really like celebrate the stories together. And if you look at really accelerate, fast forward our timeline to today's society, a lot of these interactions happen online today. I mean, the internet happened, which is great. So we can really connect with anyone from anywhere, anytime, in real time. So we have like community softwares like Twitter, Discord. You can also have like video calls like we're doing now. So yeah, I mean, I think sharing images and videos are great, but it's certainly different from what we just saw like right before, like sharing the experience and space. So so today's computer and internet, it's a great tool, a very productive tool for many different reasons, but it may not be the best tool for communities and artists to really share their experience and build communities together for many reasons. And I think we're going to look into like each of these aspects in details. So that's where the promise of the metaverse comes in. It's basically a it's a shared space that can be accessed by anyone and anywhere that can interact with each other. That would, according to ChatGPT, that's the definition of metaverse. So, but what Spatial thinks of the metaverse is that it's the future of the internet, the future of how people form communities and connect online, and that's why, like, the core thesis of like where we're headed to in terms of this the evolution of the internet is that we're, instead of just sharing information online or sharing images and videos, you can actually share the experiences with each other, and you can co-experience them together, and that's the promise of the metaverse. So we're gonna look deeper into like each of these angles. But let me actually share a brief background of where we got here before we get into the topic. Super quick background of me. I grew up like really loving spending time in nature and loved the craft. Somehow got to study engineering, but still like really loved like drawing and creative expression. And I think from that angle, the computers and user interface today look like really kind of frustrating tool for like creative, the expression, and it wasn't really capturing what people can do, really well in the physical world. And I think that like the ideas that were like being cooked up in at the media lab at Hiroshi's tangible media group was really fascinating to me. So that's how things started at the media lab for me. So since I joined the media lab, like I think it was already 10, 15 years ago, can't believe. It's been really looking into like how we can really use this, the physical sensation that we have with the hands, and how do we really deploy all our senses, but not in terms of just the physical sense, but the space surrounding those physical objects and hands. Like how do we really take advantage of the 3D space for interacting with the computers and the computing. So that's been the topic that I was very curious about, which led me to work on some other user interface project at Samsung that uses the entire space with the like large screens on the wall, like TVs, to interact with the information in more artistic form. So, and I think the one thing I realized while doing this project and experiments is that once we share this physical space, use the physical space as medium for computing, the biggest potential for doing so is that now it's not as personal. Like you can actually, it can be more collaborative medium where everyone can be part of in real time. So if you, for example, in this user interface where you're surrounded with screens and every screen is connected, people can actually not only just like stock into their personal device, but you can really be expressive and be more casual and being able to interact with, like the information not in your own kind of personal term, but you can really collect your ideas and be very creative and less kind of rigid in the sense that they can just be playful and freely express their ideas and like understand like each other's like intention like more efficiently. So that's around the time the device that I was trying on was like quite interesting. It was the HoloLens of Microsoft, which is one of the first kind of AR wearable device that was manufactured in scale. So that was probably around like 6 years ago when I was trying out for the first time. It was quite groundbreaking in a sense that you really feel can, other than haptic sensation, I guess, like the virtual graphics are floating in front of you, and that's can be shared. Why this like notion of like sharing this image, like why does it matter? If you look at this image of, this is a picture of an office of IDEO, a design studio, which I'm sure a lot of us are familiar with. There are a few interesting things that are happening here, right? Like someone needs, there's one person is like pointing at this wall, and then people have all these ideas like laid out on like a large walls, tables, So there's a lot more bandwidth between like what you're thinking, what others are thinking. So it's easier to connect, not just in terms of like sharing for the purpose of sharing information, but it's easier to get in the same page and everyone's intention of like where you're focused on, like whether you're distracted, like those are all like beautifully shared in real time. So that was the genesis of Spatial, like Spatial.io, which in its the first form of the products. So our first, when we started Spatial, the first experiment that we had was this like remote collaboration. So initially we were more interested in like looking at how do we really monetize, like how do we utilize this like large space around you to interact with the information, like versus like a smaller screen in front of you. But the groundbreaking moment happened when one of our employee, working from San Francisco, was mapping his space that's in real time shared on in New York. So we were able to like see like where this designer is like looking at, like what he's presenting, and so we were able to like see like where he's pointing at, where his gaze is at, even in its like crude kind of form of avatar, which is kind of clunky and funny. So and so that was a really interesting moment for us to like really give us conviction that this could actually work as a product. So we moved on to polish this product, and initially the spatial, the collaboration platform was really meant to tackle this remote office situation for a lot of big companies. So like, what if we can let this company with global offices to connect their offices so that you can literally virtually sit next to each other, so you can share your screen, point at some same thing together, and like you can have this sensation of sitting next to each other despite you're actually remote from each other. So I think it's more like really interesting. It's particularly interesting for the application where 3D, where the data that they deal with is like 3D, and where they are not just sharing screens, but they're also dealing with this like 3D models. For example, in this use case of the Mattel, where they were using Spatial for reviewing their the design of their toy and change their scale to review whether that fits this person, and then because usually this would have probably costed a lot more iteration and like lots of back and forth in terms of the like going to a trip to the factory and making sure that it fits. So it was quite interesting moments. And I think we moved on to like more of a generic kind of virtual meeting platform where people can not only share like like a small global offices, but anyone can just come in and just be like use the entire space to express themselves and like have like an office sort of town hall meeting, and we can also connect to the Zoom. So you can choose between like you can be like kind of more have a 3D immersive experience, or you can just join from more of a like a real like a video and Zoom. So when we're into this, let me share this screen again with video optimizations. Okay. So yeah. So, and I think it was around 3 years ago when our product was focused on helping these remote offices and remote work. So the pandemic happened, as we all know, and there are lots of disruption, to the societies, and everyone was kind of lost in terms of how to navigate. But interestingly, it was the right time for the company who's building the remote kind of work to really help the society and help the people who were disconnected and were looking for better solutions to feel together and feel co-located. So there was it was a really interesting moment for us. But what happened for the few months from that point was more interesting. So we got a lot of users and like people who are inquiring us that, hey, we want to use Spatial for remote work for this and that. And I think lots and lots of inquiries were coming in, but people who are using it more actively, it turned out to be artists, like for more of a creators who are not using this solution for like work or productivity, but it was more like, hey, I have this art exhibit that I want to share with the world, and I would love to use your platform to host my art exhibit and have this interactive experience to be kind of online, and so that people can join despite the fact that they can't really come into my physical exhibit. So like companies like Christie's Art Auction was hosting their first Metaverse art drop and auction in Spatial, and McDonald's, for example, hosting an event, their Lunar New Year's event in Spatial. So there are a lot of brands, creators, and artists who are more actively picking up. So there was a moment when we realized that there's like a bigger opportunities for us to renovate how how people communicate and form communities and general like socialize with each other online than just like narrowly focusing on the work and productivity. So since then, the product has been got a lot more interactive. So now it's actually a platform for creators and game developers and developers to easily share their interactive experiences online. Sorry, I didn't have time to edit out this like promo like videos, but you can essentially build just like how you would just create a video and share on YouTube. You can build interactive scenes in Unity and other engines. You can share it online and share it as a link, so that we're essentially merging the interactivity, games, and websites. So this essential core thesis here is that the internet is getting interactive, and I think the creators need a way to easily publish their experience online. There isn't yet. So so that's how we think about the metaverse. Like it is essentially about turning this idea of the internet from the place for sharing information to place for sharing experiences. And that's the sort of the core, the premise of the metaverse and what's happening to the internet in general. There are a few angles that I'd love to kind of look into deeper. The first thing is the notion of distance. So what does that mean to, like, how does it change like people's understanding of distance? And so when we're actively serving, which still are the artists who's hosting events and things, the biggest pain points that they were reporting was that like they couldn't really host an exhibit because of pandemic situation. And so can we recreate this art, like 3D kind of exhibit experience online, so that the artist and audience, they don't have to suffer from having this like cannot be in the same place, like having this distance. So so the Christie's auction, for example, they were actually hosting this like big events, inviting 1,000 people to the space, so that like these artists were able to like share their kind of story directly with the audience who was joining this space. And now after all, they can actually walk around and really enjoy the art, and even like and make a beat. And like, so a lot of these artists sort of needs to monetize and hold an exhibit. Like it was more for like, hey, there's a distance that's blocking them from being able to share their experience online. So we want to solve that. And I think that was part of like the angle that like Metaverse was coming in. But it's not just about the spatial distance, but like some of this art, which is actually retrospective exhibit of this photographer Yoon Gi, designed by MAS.S61 studio. It's actually recreating this like really old house where this artist was original artist was living. And when you get into the space and explore the area, you're almost like sharing this breadth of those artists, like whether it be from VR or from web, because this platform is actually like cross-platform where anyone can join from. You can join from the immersive devices like VR or web. So once you publish this experience, you can invite anyone online to join this experience, share this like very like detailed textures and old kind of structure of this like building where you can enjoy this art and also relive some of those artist activities. I think not having gravity is a big plus when it comes to the metaverse. I guess the other, but it's not just about like solving this like a distance problem, but it's also like opening the door for the new dimension of expression online. So a lot of this the artists like starting to reinvent how they would exhibit their art and like using this medium. So for example, like this is an art work from a really talented artist, Renaud, Flutter. He built this entire universe on spatial platform, for example, like where he were able to like test with like different geometry and like very articulated kind of textures that are unique, which can be lead by you know the the spatial user and whoever who's like into his like worldview. And not having gravity like really like opens up like this new kind of idea and expression. So like Benny Orr and Cyril Lansley, like they built this like they really rethink. They started like rethinking about what if the meeting place is like floating in the space and not bounded by the constraints of gravity, and you can actually be inviting a lot of people from different spaces. And I think this geometry is like really interesting in the sense that it can be multi-purpose, but also it itself is very sculpture and art, which was not it can't be imagined in the physical realm. So once you have this interesting new expression, new kind of geometry, and once you're collocated in this 3D space, the next thing you would want to do is like just be able to like how do you engage people with this like new medium? Like how do you make like your kind of creation is more interesting through this like new way to experience the environment and art and medium or topic that you're kind of showing through this like new form of storytelling. So when we made a lot of these components like interactive, the experience got a lot more engaging, and it was something that the creators and artists like found out like new kind of ways to tell their stories, like beyond just like showing the 3D exhibit and showing this 2D creative arts. So the relationship between the information that you share on internet and the viewers and participants is becoming a lot more direct. It is an experience rather than a just the visual information. And my favorite example in terms of the engagement is this work called Meta Time Capture, which is done by MAS Studio, it's a Korean studio. It's actually based on this masterpiece media art piece called Dada Iksun, which is a work of like iconic artist, media artist Nam Jun Paik. So the artwork was originally I think the institution ran out of kind of budget to restore the physical exhibit. So this studio really set out to restore it digitally, but they didn't just stop at restoring the exhibit, but they actually made it a lot more interactive so that the relationship between the participant and the art can be a lot more direct and experiential. So you can now get into this like buried grave of this old like media art piece, and now you can just kick the ball with the reflection, and now it's a lot more interesting way to experience the original art. So, and I think the games are definitely like an important medium when it comes to gaming, because gaming actually captures a lot of interesting aspects of it. It really shows us like what the future of our the way we socialize and build community online can be. It's multiplayer. People are like living through the story together and like engage with each other. So those experiences are all like happening in spatial in a sense that in a form where the participants can share and be part of the stories of the original artist and the creators through a lot more experiential and interactive format. So this is the real, like, probably the most important topic that I want to kind of share with the the group here. It's the so once we're in the 3D space, and the biggest thing that are the most important thing that's happening naturally when more than one person is in the same space is that they can share their experience, which they can co-experience things together, which is a really important notion for building the relationship. So when you think about, like, you meet your friend, instead of just sitting still, just say words, like you always want to have coffee or have lunch, and you can sometimes travel together to build memory together. That's like how fundamental way of how people have been building relationships with each other and connecting deeper with each other. So I think that's what's happening in spatial in the metaverse, is that once you're in the platform, once you're in this kind of creative worlds, there are a lot more for you to engage with and experience together that builds your collective memory, and then beyond just like sharing your kind of thoughts and conversation, so that the layers of information experience is built on top of the sharing information that's between that is about like what you're up to. So that's like why people started their society from this campfire, just by sharing this like flame, how the flame kind of looks and like what it sounds like, the cracking sound of the campfire, the bonfire. So that's been the genesis of the human society. So I think some of it is also like being relived in the metaverse, and I think that's the important notion of what's happening when people can share their experience in the 3D virtual 3D shared space. So, and once we can build a relationship with each other, I think it's the beautiful thing that can happen is that the birth of communities. So once we have, like, artists, for example, have this exhibit online. So the sort of common sentiment that we're hearing from the artists is that the relationship between the artist and the audience, the artist and the participant, it's actually getting a lot more bi-directional and human. Because today's internet, like, all you can do is you can share your art and get a lot of likes, comments, and you may get some followers, you may sell some more art, but it's all very abstract and numeric. Yes, there's always like a physical way, there's a way to host a physical exhibit, but it's not just, but the cost of having, like, co-locating everyone to the physical space is getting more and more expensive. So I think it's always coming down to, if we need to do certain aspect to exhibit online, like how much more interactive and human can it be, and how can you like humanize and immersify the abstract interaction between the creators and the audience, or between the audiences. So so instead of just like getting more likes and followers, you can now go talk to, you can kind of talk like what people are talking about your art, and you can see how people are building relationship with each other. So it's a lot more human, which is, I think, is important for the, not just the kind of monetary kind of reason for the artist, but it's fundamentally more rewarding experience than seeing their numbers ticking up on their Twitter. So the Vogue was an interesting example. Like the magazine, the Vogue, the fashion magazine, the Vogue, they have this like September issue last year, included this QR code that leads to spatial space that they created. So in their space, you can see kind of like artist work that's featured from the September issue. And you can go in and like try out their costumes, try out their design, and so that becomes this Singapore September space where people can just come in and really celebrate their artist's work, their favorite artist's work, and try out. But it doesn't stop there. It allows them to like share their passion and thoughts and opinions about this design. This helps them to like build the relationship with each other, which can actually lead to the community, the creation. So the last example I want to show you is it's the DJ Dope Stilo, who is regularly hosting DJ the music event in Spatial, where he hosts like this amazing performance, but also like hosting lots of people who are coming in and gathering, celebrating their music, and then dancing together. So he was able to build lots of communities through this online experience during the pandemic. And I think even after pandemic, he started like hosting events offline, but now it's extendable into the metaverse where, because they can't really fit everyone into this physical space. So now every time he has to hold this the real DJ event, he has an extension of this metaverse space where some people can join online, which is a much more natural extension of the physical space than you would have from Twitter Space or Zoom or other ways. Um, so, but it's not just about building communities of today. It's also about communities of tomorrow's. So this is a really inspiring drawing from the elementary school students, which is done during the charity event hosted by this architecture studio, Daehwa Kang Design. So Daehwa Studio actually had this idea of like engaging children for architecture design. I think if you think about the really letting them build the real building, it can be very dangerous, but they're able to like they ask children to draw the future of the city of the future that they think is as the kind of future that they want to live, which is sustainable and inspiring. So the children started drawing this diagram and a lot of sketches with crayon, which is their favorite tools, more so than Cinema 4D or Unity. So, and then the architecture studio, the Dewakan studio turned them into like a beautiful geometry in like a couple of days, where now children can see their like ideas of the cities, like having actual shape, and they can now experience this with their families and friends, inviting people to like really live in their kind of dream house in a very matter of few days. And I think that was really inspiring to see like some of how the speed of how fast the idea of somebody like somebody coming from the like children in school taken into like the form of experience that can be shared and experienced by lots of people. So the thing about the metaverse is that it's shortening the gap between the idea and experience. And I think when that gap, that speed is increased, I think we have more chances to elaborate our ideas and iterate more on our ideas before it actually impacts the world. So I think it was very interesting example of and they were able to build a community within this space that they're with friends and families and groups that they're sharing their interests with. So so I think we talked about a lot of different concepts, but the core thing which I want to share and discuss today during the class is that, so I think we're living the era where the internet is meant to be helping you to share the information, and whether it be, starting from text and images and videos, which is really changed our lives, and it connected all of us. It allowed us to like work much faster and doing it. But I think essentially it's still information, and I think it is in certain ways in a form of like a kind of static information that's still stuck in the screen. We do want to evolve, I think, eventually, but I would say that's the constraints of the input and output device, honestly. Like we do as a human, like we really want to share our experiences. That's how we started from the campfire. And I think that's sort of how this like evolution of internet is leading us to. So that's summarizes my talk today. I'd love to really have this as a conversational like discussion. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for this inspirational talk. So now, whoever has questions in the Zoom call, turn on your cameras and join the conversation and ask your questions. Hiroshi is already there.
Yeah, can I ask a question? Can you hear me?
Of course.
Yeah.
Jinha, it's really great that seeing the amazing evolutions of the community. Maybe the last slide you show has something very important. Google Doc allows us to share the information, co-edit. But the experience having a party together, like a dance party in Zen, hybrid is very, very powerful. But beyond shared experiences, you can go to same park, same concert, you can share. But next level is how you can go deep to interpersonal communication, discussion, negotiation, trust, authenticity. So still seeing a lot of the work people doing, people really touch very superficial skin deep surface, like a visual Turing test, or believable, or photorealistic, but we are not the photos. Jinha, you know me, also I know you. How you react really matters. But to discuss something serious, I use whole boundaries of facial expression. But technically, it's impossible because you still have puppetry. You have to manipulate. So how you can go beyond shared experience to real, deep, trust-based interpersonal communication? That's my question.
Yeah. I think, yeah, it's a really great question. Thanks, Hiroshi. And I think the keyword here is the trust. And I think it's a topic that's super important when we think about interpersonal communication. And I think, well, a couple of things I want to share is like, I think we're still not sure the metaverse will replace every aspect of the internet. I think when it comes to like, I think you mentioned like Google Doc and negotiation, and I think those are the area that actually requires a lot more kind of trust between the participants, and the trust in a sense that you really want to kind of like have a lot more like bandwidth between you and I, like in terms of like facial and gesture, and really have this instinctive like gut reaction that like you're real and I'm real. And I think that is basically will require a lot more iteration on the way the person is represented in the metaverse, like when it comes to like those areas of applications. So I think eventually where the metaverse is evolving, it will be step by step. But I think the eventual like goal or eventual step where this could go is that you and I are really have this like have a feeling of you're co-located in the same space, whether it be through the immersive device or other technologies. And that will probably require a lot more iteration on the avatars and the capturing and stuff. Yeah. And I think some of us actually do acknowledge that today's sort of technological landscape, that may be a bit stretched to get there yet. So that's part of why we want to focus on more of a kind of like a community-driven and games and funds and art and creation-based sort of community building. But I think it's really interesting question that I don't honestly have like a very firm answer to. Like, how do we get deeper in terms of interpersonal communication? The AI is probably taking a lot more interesting twist on this like landscape by it gives people ability to like recreate their avatar in a very photorealistic way. But that will still pose us a question like, how can you believe anything that's real when it goes through Wi-Fi and network? If there's like an AI filter. So and I think I have more questions than answers when it comes to the topic of like, how can you recreate the trust that we have in the physical realm? So yes, I think that's my honest sentiment towards you.
Jinha, that's very interesting. You're very honest, but I have a different view. Video, I can still know it's a real or fake. But the very advanced photorealistic rendered stuff with AI, it's so easy to cheat or deceive. So avatar doesn't work for the real serious interpersonal communication. Means metaverse doesn't work. Still video survive as much better tools. Important thing is it's not a step by step. It's not incremental. It's a huge divide, valley, black hole. So beyond shared experience, it's okay. But if you want to really have an interpersonal communication, mediated by artificial avatar really destroy the fundamental stuff. Fundamental is hackable. Also, we have very good sensitivity to see something weird, uncanny valley. You can't really change it. That's the reason I'm shocked because Meta really believe more camera, more technology, more boundaries, then they can make a photorealistic, but without a photo. And also it's more believable, but believable means deceivable. So as a socially responsible company like you, I think it's very important to draw clear line that the shared experience is great, but beyond that, is that the role that the metaverse should really play with the meta avatar? And if you doubt, maybe it's good to make very clear rather than saying a step by step. We have to move forward to some extent. That's my advice.
Yeah, thanks for your advice. Just want to share this one sentiment though. Like, I would say, I think seeing the video is more believable, but I think it's still some level of representation of who we are, and I think it's something that we have to get used to. But I don't think it's still the same as like having this like real person sitting next to me.
It's super clear. Of course, it's super clear. But I'm talking about mediated by avatar, computed manipulated. That's a real problem. So don't distract it to the real versus video. That's a secondary discussion. It's not an important point. Most important things, why avatar emulated the representation, which is almost believable, can really foster the trust. I really shocked about some naivety that the big company has about the Turing test, visual Turing test. I was very shocked because I have a strong admiration to Turing, but now they're completely misunderstanding. Frozen photorealistic avatar, which undistinguishable as a real photo, is a key of success. It's a completely wrong idea. So I just want to make sure that your company doesn't make the same mistake.
It's a great advice. We'll definitely think about it deeper.
So it looks like Becky has a question as well.
Yeah. Hi, Jinha. Thank you so much. This is very enlightening. I don't have any background in the metaverse, and so this was good. I'm just curious, like from what you said, it seems like that the metaverse right now is using the physical world as a medium to be able to experience the virtual world. Can you see, and like I know that we're right at the beginning of the start of this technology, but could you see like an even more convergence where like the virtual world will be even more significant than the physical world? I mean, it's very long shot of a prediction, but
yeah, I think it's kind of hard to tell like what is more important, what's not. I do have a feeling that everyone has like different sentiment about this question, but my personal take is that I think online experience today is in terms of the economical and kind of functional, like if you look at your productivity scape, like 80% of your work has to be done online. So in that sense, it's still more important because you're spending more time on that. We want to like make enough effort to make this experience comparable and more human, whatever that means. That can mean different things to different people. And that's where the metaverse probably comes. It's not necessarily replacing, oh, like let's not spend any good time in physical world, but let's all bring that into the digital. It's probably not the right promise for the metaverse evolution, but it's more about still already 80% of like our digital activities are happening online. So we'd better make it better and more interesting and less lonely. And I think so, but when it comes to what is more important, if you want to give up your physical like activities entirely or digital activities entirely, like I think everyone would probably say like I'd rather like give up digital. And so eventually it will be very sad to see that answer flips and people say like, oh, actually online life is more important and I would rather give up the physical life because of that. That's probably not the vision that we want to portray as a company. But if you look at identity, like the people who are under 20 or 15 today, it's like they think of, if you do a survey, there's they think of their identity, like they think of their like virtual identity more seriously than the physical identity in terms of how they look and what they wear. So there's a market research that say people will probably be willing to spend 80% on digital clothing and 20% on physical clothing. So that also like shows us that it's, you know, not like it may not be a stretch to say like maybe this new generation may think differently in 30 years. So, but we as a company, we don't necessarily think that it will be entirely virtual, period. And I don't think that's the right vision.
No, thank you. This was insightful.
Very interesting. Jinha, I also have a question. Maybe something very subtle that you talked about. You said there's a switch when the artist could only show their artwork, and now they can create interactivity. From my work, I would always say, look, currently we're only on the content layer. We can only show stuff. And when you go to these metaverses, it becomes boring quick because you can only look at things. It's really going to be interesting once you can hit the application layer, when you can really build applications in this metaverse and build new services and new enterprise and all of that stuff. And so I saw that advertisement you put on everywhere. I saw it on LinkedIn about how you now can push the publish button and publish your worlds and so on. And you talked a little bit about how it's now possible to deploy these things. I'm curious if you can share a little bit. Is there a technological change? Has there something happened in your company or in the technological environments that you use? Like, is there a radical shift in the way of how authors now can deploy interactive environments or write worlds and applications into existence? Because from my perspective, when the hype happened about the metaverse last year, that was a big part why I could see it as a hype, because that layer of self-authoring really was limited. So
right.
I think that from my perspective, it's a gigantic change. You only talked very subtle about it, so maybe you can talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's a really interesting question. So when we first got into like supporting like creators to share their experience online, it was more focused on setting up the kind of like art exhibit, like aka like they were able to like upload their art and decorate on the kind of digital 3D space. So I think so the key difference that we were making with this like new kind of evolution of the company is that instead of uploading like 3D models and like 2D art or you know, videos, now you can actually upload your entire scene from the Unity into the space that in a form that they can run on the web browser. So that's like a big technological, like the platform change that we have been working on for a while, and we recently released, but that's been undergoing. We've been undergoing this change for quite a bit. Yeah, I think that the reason was clear. Like that's what bring people together. I think like when people can interact with each other, like just seeing and being able to like skimming through the space is not enough. Like when you make it more engaging, it gives more opportunities for people to like have fun together and share this memory and like talk, and it opens up. Versus like if it was too. The first iteration was we thought of it as more of a 3D website, but I think now we're taking it more into the like interactive social website versus like 3D website. So that's the kind of big shift that we were undergoing in the past few months.
And is there, do you have some deeper integration with Unity there, or is this like a
it's
an
the
environment
Unity
you load, or
yeah, it's a Unity base. So our toolkit SDK is built on Unity. So if students want to kind of build the entire scene and if they're familiar with Unity, so all they have to do is download SDK and publish to Spatial, and you will see your interactive scene in Unity. You can build it our like the components that's going to make the Unity easier, but that can be published to the web via mobile instantly. So that's the core premise of it. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. Because I don't want to name any other platform. I saw other platforms where you really can only upload like 3D models or so. This is a radical shift, I think, and probably for what builds the metaverse, that's probably the most important piece, I would say, to be able to have such freedom. So it's a pretty cool development.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
I'll just ask a really quick one. Hi, Jinha, nice to see you. I've been following your company for a while, and I know early on, and also you included this in your presentation, you're using very realistic faces for these avatars, and I guess slowly you switch it to Ready Player Me. I'm assuming that's the partnership that you have. We had Timu give a talk, I think 2 weeks ago. I'm kind of curious, is the direction shifting more and more towards purely everything's digital, right? Like you're not borrowing references from actual faces anymore, even like, virtual spaces completely built from the ground up instead of, maybe it's like, let's say I scan a physical gallery and I try to put it into the web. I'm curious about the decision behind that. Maybe it could be like I don't know, business decision, but from a design perspective, because you're a designer, and could you just speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think there are a few factors that we were considering when we make the shift. One, I think Hiroshi brought it up again. There's the uncanny valley is like it's actually with today's technology, probably maybe even in a future technology, it may be pretty hard to like overcome. Like the first like we do still provide a way to generate your face, like 3D face based on your photorealistic photo. Even today, it's kind of living next to each other, like that and the stylized like Ready Player Me style avatar. And but the reason why we're putting more emphasis on more stylistic, stylized and synthetic kind of avatars is the uncanny valley is like #1 reason, but also like I think we just felt like a lot more like desire to like express themselves in different ways in the world. Like that's a reason why people would come to the metaverse, to express themselves in a way that they would not be able to like in the physical world. So like why not, like helping them sort of maximize their ability to express themselves, giving more flexibility to do that. So you can now custom upload your avatars too, like just having your favorite characters uploaded and use it as your sort of kind of second character. So it is becoming just more flexible, but I think when it comes to the environment though, like it is also like creators were, I think first we were starting from the AR kind of first company, so it was naturally having the things that are uploaded to space had to look compatible with the AR space. So sometimes you have to like go from like this like realistic office to different metaverse space, and if you just go to a completely out of space so it just feel like really off. But now I think the majority of use cases are happening in community building, like having fun with your friends and gathering and celebrating and stuff. So the needs to make this compatible with the realistic office is like got a lot less significant than before. And it comes down to people think of it as like a way to express themselves and create their dreams within. So that's the way we think about it's more emphasis on the creation and expression, and this concerns about the uncanny valley, but we still want to respect like how creators and players want to do, like, so that's why we have both options today.
Oh, and hey, how's it going? I can turn my camera on, it's just on my phone here, but hey, how's it going? Thanks for the great talk. And I've also been a follower of Spatial for a while. One of the things you may have mentioned this, and I guess it's probably online, but I was curious about the content policy. Once you upload something through to Spatial, what's like kind of the licensing or ownership through that? Because I know different platforms have different like rules for that. And I was just kind of curious what your thoughts on that are. How you guys
Yeah. So the license actually leaves. So the ownership is still up. It's your ownership. The creators. It's essentially same as YouTube. You can think of it as YouTube, but for 3D interactive content. So.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, I just know because that's sometimes a concern people have with certain platforms using it. So.
Right.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right.
Okay. If there's no other questions, Jinha, thank you so very much. This was a very inspiring talk. Hiroshi is back online. Maybe you have one more? No.
I just want to thank to Jinha. It's amazing to see the advancement. So many creators gather to their artistic expression. It's amazing success and a bit different direction from Meta announced, but I like it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So continue the great work, Jinha. I always looking at you and following you. Yeah.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Take care.
Here.
Thank you very much.